This is Flying Dog to headquarters.
This is Control Tower. We have you on radar.
Entering security hole.
Hello all, and welcome to another episode of Hangar 412, the show that gives you the rundown on the lore and technology behind some of our favorite vehicles in fiction. And in this episode, we'll explore the lore behind the Guardian Units of Nations line of battle mechs.
One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power, you almost never get it back.
The Guardian Units of Nations, or G.U.N for short, possesses an extensive arsenal of high-tech weapons and vehicles to combat any threat to the stability of the current world order. In a previous video, actually one of my first videos on this channel that was lore-focused, and wasn't, a 3D VR experience, we took a look at the Blue Eagle fighter, another one of G.U.N's many high-tech vehicles. In this video, though, we'll be exploring the lore behind probably one of my favorite components of the G.U.N arsenal: the heavy multi-role combat walkers. Starting off with the very first iterations of what would later become the standard mech design. Even though they were destroyed over 50 years apart, both of these craft are virtually identical. So, without further introduction, let's start with the lore behind the HD-1 Heavy Dog and the LZ-12R Blue Falcon battle mechs. The HD-1 and her sister ship that would come along 50 years later, the LZ-12R, would be unique in the combat mech line, as they were closer to hovercraft than traditional mechs, as they lacked any mechanical legs for locomotion. Rather, they would use 3 clusters of 5 thrusters, try saying that 5 times fast while you're drunk, that would rotate around the bottom of the fuselage in order to move the craft around. As for armaments, both craft were also equipped with 7 modernized removable M202 flash-style 4-barrel missile launchers. 6 of these would be located on the upper rim, of the fuselage, in a radial pattern pointing outwards in all directions, with the 7th being, of course, located under the cockpit on the nose. Both craft also came equipped with 30 energy projectors around the midsection of the fuselage, confusingly named the particle beam cannon. The particle beam cannon is anything but, as it does not act as a cannon and it does not fire any kind of beam of particles of any kind. In fact, the particle beam cannon is more like a Tesla coil, as it creates a ring of high voltage electricity around the vehicle, either around the top rim of the fuselage, the bottom base of the fuselage on the ground, or around the midsection. And this is powerful enough to melt the flesh off of any enemy combatants trying to make it close to the vehicle, making it impossible to get within range. As identical as these craft were, they did differ in a few ways, however. For example, the HD-1 can deploy aerial mines, whereas the LZ-12R has the ability to drop very similar unguided bombs to that used by the Bomb Wing and Bomb Beetle gun beetles. It also seems that the LZ-12R is a bit faster and has the ability to fly rather than just simply hover a few feet above the ground, compared to her sister craft, the HD-1, from 50 years previous. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any data on the dimensions, top speed, or weight, or anything like that. And without me going back and playing Shadow the Hedgehog, which is not an enjoyable experience, and remembering that I was a film and history major, not a math major, before dropping out of college, I was just not in the mood to play MatPat and try to do pixel measurements and figure this all out. If anyone else wants to do that, absolutely. That drives engagement on my video if you can figure that out in the comments. In fact, even make your own video. I encourage it. Why the heck not? Anyway, moving past that, the HD-1 would be destroyed during a raid on the Space Colony Ark Bernal Spherical Space Colony and Research Facility. And ironically, the LZ-12R would meet the same fate protecting the Ark's Eclipse cannon half a century later. However, just before the destruction of the LZ-12R Blue Falcon, G.U.N would resurrect the Gunmobile project by developing 3 new prototype mechs, starting with the F6T Bigfoot. The F6T base design would be the template that would later be used for the rest of the Gunmobile line moving forward. The F6T would introduce the iconic legs and missile launchers to the design, along with some returning familiar features, such as the very angular AH-64 Apache or AH-1 Cobra shaped cockpit, and the use of thrusters to supplement the vehicle's all-terrain capabilities and give it the capability of flight. The F-6T was originally developed for counterinsurgency operations and was accordingly used against the United Federation's own civilian populace. And the vehicle was also used against Dr. Robotnik's private military, but to loop back around to how the vehicle was used as essentially an overpowered Bearcat, it was also used to apprehend Sonic the Hedgehog during a failed jailbreak attempt, where the vehicle was ultimately destroyed in the exchange. The F-6T came armed with one M32A1 22mm Gatling gun under the cockpit, and the 2 missile launch ports on either side of the cockpit that give it that distinct Mickey Mouse appearance can fire up to 4 each, though in game it's shown to be 8, AIM-120C Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Surface Missiles, though that's not a thing, those would be air-to-air missiles. The craft also featured a combination of composite ceramic and depleted uranium armor, also known as a war crime, on sloped surfaces to deflect incoming projectiles. And to protect against everything else, the craft also featured an automatic fire suppression system, a sealed positive pressure cockpit to protect against nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, and a 3-barreled auto turret and armored bulkheads between the turret and engines just forward of the cockpit. And the craft measured in with a length of 5.05 meters or 16.6 feet, a width of 5.85 meters or 19.2 feet, and a height of 5.51 meters or 18.1 feet. And the craft would weigh in at a weight of 45,631.39 kilograms or 45.63 metric tons or 100,600 pounds or 50.3 US tons. Because no one can get on the same page about how to measure frigging anything. And base 10 is superior, just saying. And all of this powered by a G.U.N F-Series diesel engine, allowing the vehicle to travel at a maximum speed of 72.42 kilometers an hour or 45 miles an hour on solid level ground. And 2 R-Series turbofan engines, giving the craft a top speed of 157.7 kilometers an hour or 98 miles an hour in flight. As previously stated, the F-6T was lost in an attempt to recapture Sonic the Hedgehog after he escaped from an Mi-24 Hind in flight after being arrested by the Guardian Units of Nations after being framed for theft. The next Gunmobile prototype would be nearly identical in every way to the previous model, the F-6T, except for some very minor differences. This model would be designated the B3X Hotshot, and the really only noticeable difference between the B3 and the F6 would be the 200mm long-range beam cannon just under the standard M32A1 22mm Gatling gun, just in front of the main air intake there. This beam cannon is oddly enough more accurately named than on the earlier HD-1 and LZ-12 models, as it actually fires like a cannon, but rather than firing a directed beam of energy, so they still got the beam part wrong, the cannon creates a sphere of energy that functions very similar to a mortar or a cannonball when fired. Oddly enough, this cannon seems to add an additional 7,348.19 kilograms or 16,200 pounds to the vehicle's overall weight, giving the B3 an overall dry weight of 52,979.58 kilograms or 52.97 metric tons, or 116,800 pounds, or 58.4 US tons. Other than that, though, all of the other statistics and specifications are identical to the F6. The B-3 was actually destroyed just before the F-6 in an attempt to try to contain the ultimate life form after Dr. Ivo Robotnik broke into a containment facility on Prison Island in order to retrieve it. The final gunmobile prototype, designated R-1A Flying Dog, seemingly paying homage to the HD-1 Heavy Dog, was probably the most unique out of all three of these gunmobile prototypes. The R1 was designed strictly as a multi-role and ground attack aircraft. That's why the Flying Dog replaces the legs seen on the previous F6 and B3 models with two small lift engines and one large lift engine on either side of the fuselage, giving the craft a total of 6 additional thrusters in place of where the legs would be on the previously mentioned F6 and B3 models. The R1 comes armed with one MJ2A1 22mm Gatling gun, slightly faster than the M32A1 seen on her sister craft, along with the iconic 200mm long-range beam cannon seen on the B3, and 8 AIM-120C advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles deployed from 2 missile launch ports on either side of the fuselage, just like on her sister craft as well. In addition to this, the R1 also features hardpoints that can be fitted with extra weapons such as electronic countermeasure pods or 10 additional AA or AGM missiles, air-to-air or air-to-ground. And all that weaponry crammed into a fuselage measuring in at a length of 3.62 meters or 11.9 feet, a width of 4.81 meters or 15.8 feet, a height of 3.47 meters or 11.4 feet, and a wingspan of 1.15 meters or 3.8 feet. And all this combined, plus the engines we'll get to later, give the aircraft a dry weight of 40,732.59 kilograms or 40.73 metric tons or 89,800 pounds or 44.9 US tons. And all of this powered by 7 standard G.U.N F-Series turbofan engines and 2 G.U.N RX-01 turbofan engines with afterburners, outputting 16,000 pounds of thrust and giving the craft a top speed of 241.4 kilometers an hour or 150 miles an hour and a range of 3,862.42 kilometers or 2,400 miles, and with a service ceiling of roughly 32,000 feet. And like her sister craft, this model was also destroyed, this time by Rouge the Bat on Prison Island when Dr. Robotnik sent her there to retrieve the Chaos Emeralds stored on the island. Robotnik then proceeded to destroy the entire island complex, thus leaving little chance of anything remaining. Though it is believed the R1A was destroyed with the rest of Prison Island, it is rumored that there are 2 other variants of the R1 out there, the R1B and R1C, with tandem 2-seating configurations, as opposed to the standard 1-seat we saw on the R1A model. The status of these aircraft, though, is unknown, so they could have either been destroyed along with the rest of Prison Island, or it is possible there is a chance you could still see one of these in the skies over Mobius to this day. And last, but certainly not least, finally we have the full mass production variants of the Gunmobile. Sometime between the destruction of Prison Island and the arrival of the Black Comet, Gun developed the Bigfoot Type A and Type B. The F6 Bigfoot Type A is almost identical to the F6T and B3 minus the distinctive missile launchers, and is slightly less armored. The F6R Bigfoot Type B is basically a carbon copy of the F6T Bigfoot, but given a more subdued, less toy-like, more subtle, grown-up paint scheme. Now, technically, chronologically, the LZ-12R was the final gunmobile developed as sort of a throwback to the original design 50 years prior with the HD-1, but it just flowed better talking about her with her sister at the same time, made the script a little bit more condensed. That's all, I just felt it just flowed better. But yes, technically speaking, the final gunmobile was the Blue Falcon, and that was also destroyed, as previously mentioned. I have to say, while I was writing this script, it occurred to me that my film professor would have absolutely loved how bookended, as he called it, the story of the Gunmobile is. The story starts with the destruction of the HD-1 and ends with the destruction of her twin, the LZ-12R, and both at the hands of Shadow. And to add further to the ironic poetry of the Gunmobile tale, the HD-1 met its end partaking in an invasion of the Ark by hostile forces. Essentially, Gun were the alien invaders invading from the planet below, while the LZ-12R met its end defending the Ark from actual alien invaders from the comet above. Well, that's all the lore we have on one of my all-time favorite mechs from fiction. And I'm gonna be honest, while I was working on this video, I didn't quite know where else to cram this in, but it occurred to me that the Gunmobile almost looks more Halo-esque with its very Vietnam helicopter cockpit and overall aesthetic than that of the actual mechs seen in Halo, like the Mantis. Honestly, it really does look to me more like the Gunmobile would fit in better in Halo Sandbox visually and functionally than the Mantis does. Maybe minus the flying ability, that might make it overpowered. But to make my point clear, here's a skin I made for it. Well, this script somehow turned out to be longer than I planned. Anyway, despite that, I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into the lore behind one of the most iconic enemies in the Sonic franchise. And if you did, don't forget to homing attack into the like and subscribe buttons, and lightspeed dash into that bell icon, and definitely don't forget to leave a comment down below for more videos just like this. Peace.
Children's and grandchildren's time, with the United States as a service and information economy, with nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to send their own agendas or knowledge to be questioned those in authority, when clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes. Our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true. We slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness. The dominantly influential media, the 30-second sound bites, countdown to 10 sounds or less. Most common denominator programming, credulous persons on pseudo-chance and superstition, but especially a connoisseur of ignorance.